What's up, man? It's Toshitaka Kondo, editor up at Complex, and you're now tuned into the spotlight on goodfellamedia.com. I guess right now, in terms of like my responsibilities here, you could basically say I'm the music editor here. So I kind of handle all the music content for the site. I do a little bit of stuff with the book, like front of the book. We have the sprawl section, which is kind of like where we do complex individuals, shot callers, stuff like that. So I still handle that. But on the day-to-day thing, I'm kind of like handling all the web stuff and all the music content. And before this, I kind of came in like anyone else that you would kind of meet coming into the game. It's like I started out interning at Mass Appeal, which I don't know if a lot of people remember because it went down in like 06, 07. But I worked there and kind of like, with my mentor Noah was my mentor there, and I was working with him, and he kind of like linked me with a lot of people over Double XL, Vibe. So I started writing for them. And actually, when I came on board and interned at Mass Appeal, Noah was already like a senior editor over Vibe, so he was already handling a lot of the front of book stuff. So I started writing for him, and then kind of like it just I ended up in a situation where a position opened up there, and then I ended up at Vibe for like a year. And then I was basically at that point writing for like King, Vibe, like all the different magazines. And then once I moved over to MTV, that's when I started freelancing for basically everyone. Like then at that point, Noah had came over here in like 06. So I was at Complex, all the different places, and just ended up doing a bunch of different different stories, different interviews. And then that was it. Yeah.
I mean, you were fortunate enough to pick up a couple of nice little vendors. That could keep you.
I mean, I think it's tough now. Like I would not want to be a freelance writer in 2010, 2011. It's just kind of like, I think being now like where it is, it's like you have to really be established to where like, there's certain people who I look at, I'm like, that's a good way to be. Like if you're like John Karamonic and you're writing for like the New York Times a lot, and then you also can kind of pop in here or there and do, say, like a little, feature for Vibe or whatever it might be. But it's like, it's so tough because everything's so web-based and the web rates just don't add up. It's like when we first came in, when you were first starting out at Vibe or Double XL, you were getting $1 a word, so it's like you could make a living if you knew, if you were getting enough work. But these days it's like you could be top of the line and you might get $1 a word, or at least for like urban publications. It's like I don't know how Playboy and I've heard Playboy's like $3 a word. I don't know if that's still the rate. Mm-hmm. So if you're like in that echelon, then if you're like as a writer, if you're doing that, and then you're also like say writing books and doing all types of different stuff, then you can definitely make a good living. But if you're just trying to write, like the idea of making a living being like a freelance writer in music journalism is a very tough thing to accomplish. I don't think it's something that I'd want to try and do. It's tough.
So I'm Toshi in 2010. You graduated school at that time, or?
Nah, I got out of school in 2000. So I've been in the game for a minute. I was actually doing when I first got out of school, I wasn't even doing writing. I studied finance at Maryland, and I ended up in Florham Park doing I was doing finance for AT&T, and then from there it was kind of like a rotational program, and ended up doing like IT, building like databases and like doing web applications, and it was like the worst shit ever. It's just kind of like you're just sitting there and you're like early 20s, and you're just like, man, like I can't do this for the rest of my life. Like I might kill myself.
Especially, I'm sure you're around a lot of people who are already worn down. Yeah,
you kind of like are around a lot of people who are just like they already checked out of life. They're just like, I mow my lawn on the weekends and I play with my kids, and I know it's not that great, but fuck, like I don't know what else to do.
This beats suicide.
Yeah, that's basically what it was. It's just like you run into a lot of people who just, it's like you could tell like the spirit. They gave up on life, like it's over, like for them. Now it's coming up. When I came up, I kind of came up. It's funny now that like, and it's been this way, but that rap is so mainstream now, where it's just acceptable. Like it's kind of almost like the way it is when kids grow up now. It's like it's just acceptable. Like rap is pop music in the sense of like your parents aren't going to be upset if you like rap. Like I remember when I was young, and the first album I really liked was like say Straight Outta Compton. That's the album that kind of like really put me in that place where I was like, oh, this is crazy. And I remember listening to it, and I didn't even know what it was. I just read about it, and so I brought the tape home and I put it in the speakers. And I didn't have a boom box or anything. I had a little boom box, but I didn't even know what it was. So I put it in in my living room, I just put in the speakers there, and Straight Outta Compton came on, and my dad flipped out because it's like the first
Crazy
like 4
motherfucker
bars.
named
Yeah,
Ice Cube.
exactly. Ice Cube just comes on and he's just cursing, and so my dad took the tape, and I remember that night I like went and snuck in his room and took the tape, and then I dubbed it and put it back there, and after that I was just hooked. But I remember coming up, it was just interesting because like it was like when I was coming up, like if you liked rap and were really, really super into rap, it was definitely, especially coming up in the suburbs, you were like, you wanted to be black. Like that was the thing. You were just a wigger and you wanted to be black. You couldn't just like rap. Like these days you could grow up and just like rap and be like, you're just a normal kid that likes rap. But back then when I was coming up, it was like, if you liked rap a lot, then you were some weirdo. Like you were, why do you want to be black? I remember my mom flipped out because I already was really into rap, and I remember I bought they were the Tim Hardaways that had like the straps coming across.
With the web.
And my mom got so upset when because I think jokingly, I kind of told her they were the Malcolm X shoes, so she got really, really upset. That she was like, "Why are you wearing the Malcolm X shoes? You're not black." And she was really upset at me because I don't know, but yeah. So it was definitely a different time coming up.
So you're saying back then there was more of a divide, especially in your household, with like there was the connotation with hip hop being a black sport, and now it's like more like it's mainstream.
Yeah, it's more just regular. That's just what people do. They just like rap, and so. Yeah, when I was coming up, it was definitely something different. And then also, like, it's like, you talk about the finance and the music. It's like when you're coming up in Maryland and you're growing up there, not that it's country bumpkin or anything like that. Like, the area I grew up in was really nice. Potomac, Montgomery County was like a suburb, but it's like, you don't come up running into people who do music. So it's like, the idea to you it seems foreign. Like, the idea of, oh, I'm going to grow up and make a living in music. Like, it doesn't even register. So I was just in school like, oh, I'm going to go get a finance degree, because it's like, when you're here, in New Jersey or like tri-state area, it's like you run into people who work at labels, you run into like managers, so it's like it's easy for you to see someone and emulate that and be like, oh, I want to be like that. Like that's possible to be someone who makes a living in music.
That's not.
In Maryland, it was just kind of like you're like, that's why when I first came up here, it was crazy. Like I would, randomly run into someone who worked at Def Jam or like randomly run into someone who worked at Tommy Boy, and it was just crazy because to me, I was just like, damn, I can't believe people actually have lives like this where they work in music, So that's why it kind of was like at first. It wasn't even a thought process of mine to like even try and pursue anything in music. Yeah, it's definitely an interesting time right now. Like it's like, it's just interesting because it's like the kids that come up these days, it's not even like they're like pirates trying to steal stuff. They're just kind of like, they just grow up on like music being free. Mm-hmm. So it's like the idea of, to be honest with you, a lot of times when I see these sales figures these days where it's like, Drake sold 1 million CDs or, Nicki's at almost platinum, blah, blah. I don't understand who's buying these CDs. Like, I don't understand because nobody I know buys CDs. Like, I don't know. So it's like, it's an interesting time because I came up in a time where, like, I still have, just boxes of CDs, like 700 CDs in my room. Because I was the kind of person who, like, every Tuesday I was going to the CD store and buying CDs, and that's what I came up on, and dudes just doing, like, crazy numbers. Eminem doing 1.7 million and stuff. So it's been interesting to see how, and I came up, when I was coming out of school was when Napster was first coming about. So that's when my younger brother, who was very computer savvy, he was starting to give me CDs, like, 2 weeks before they came out. But me, I always wanted, like, the artwork, so I would still buy the CDs. So to me, I always thought, like, oh, well, it's not going to really be a big deal. Like, people are still going to buy CDs. And it was like that for a while, but then you started seeing around, like, I would say, like, 05, 06, you started really seeing that shift to where, like, people just stopped buying CDs and got used to the idea of music just being free. So
I was around.
Yeah. So it's like, that's, it's just one of those things where it's been interesting. Like, it's like, people are still making money, but I think that one of the things that is done, which is not even, like, it's kind of a reflection on the way this country is even in a lot of ways. It's like, you see how the inequality gap, whether in music or in the world, is just kind of like in our country has just kind of like widened a lot. Where it's like in rap, I feel like it almost feels like when you look around, there's like maybe 10 or 15 people that are actually making money off rap, and then everyone's just broke. Yeah. In terms of like artists, like it just feels like all the rest of the artists are just kind of struggling. And then you have like these upper echelon dudes, whether it's Young Money people or like maybe like Wiz or whoever it might be, like Kanye, those Jay, whatever, like you could name maybe like 20 rappers who are really making good money, and then after that it seems like everyone else is just kind of scrambling. So it's an interesting time.
The go-getter.